Imagine entering a fancy restaurant and not wearing your typical designer attire. Rather, you look like someone society usually overlooks and wear ragged clothes. People's treatment toward you would be: Elon Musk chose to do a risky sociological experiment whereby he turned into a homeless person to test whether compassion and empathy might overcome preconceptions. What comes next will test what you believe to be known about human behavior. Stay tuned for a potent lesson on compassion that might permanently alter our perspective of one another. That afternoon in Elon Musk's Austin, Texas, office was quite calm. Typically humming with executives, designers, and engineers, the office was still. Sitting across from a close friend drinking coffee, Jan, known for his endless vitality and inventiveness, was savoring a rare time of reflection. This started a discussion that would later inspire a brilliant idea based on human behavior, especially the way people treat and assess others depending on their appearance. What people think of you or how much of it depends on appearances. Elon's colleague told Jan about a friend who faced mistreatment for dressing modestly at a high-end retailer. The narrative really touched him. He leaned back in his chair, squinting as if contemplating the immense consequences of compromising our beliefs. How would one do this? He wondered about himself. Though Jan carried on without stopping, a coworker nodded in accord. Without Jan, what would happen? If I didn't have Jan's position, wealth, or celebrity, would people treat me differently? How would others view me? That question hovered in the room as silence descended. Jan's imagination rapidly turned to a fresh concept as usual. This was the beginning of his scheme for a daring social experiment that would challenge morality and empathy. At 2:01, Jan covered himself in a ripped jacket. It was more than simply a cover. It was the first step in his path to investigate human behavior from Elon Musk's decision-making perspective. To finish his metamorphosis, he paid a professional makeup artist. The outcome was very remarkable. His face seemed to have aged for decades. Working for hours, the artist methodically changed Jan's looks to include dark circles under his eyes, dull skin, and severe wrinkles. His makeup helped him to seem like someone who had spent years living on the streets. A spotty artificial beard and a scuffed, uncombed wig finished the look. Following extensive investigation, he decided on Gia, an elite venue visited by the upper class, and Golden Maple, a high-end restaurant in Atlanta. Looking in the mirror, he saw a tired, defeated guy, barely unnoticeable in the ideal society, instead of the confident and strong millionaire cherished by the world. He mumbled to himself, his voice a mixture of exhilaration and nervousness. Golden Maple's magnificent surroundings, with their opulent suites and fine cuisine, would offer the ideal backdrop for his study. The aim was to explore whether people could transcend their preconceptions and treat one another compassionately in an environment where looks dominated more than personal qualities. Jan experienced a range of emotions as the time approached. Despite his anxiety about seeing the mirror, Jan was thrilled by the opportunity to explore a different universe and see life from the perspective of those often overlooked. He could manage it. He was uncomfortable in his disguise. The man in the mirror was a pallid, readily disregarded man rather than Elon Musk, the millionaire with power and notoriety. What if things turn out worse than I expected? What if no one is kind? He questioned aloud. Though it felt different, this was just another obstacle for him. Jan stood in front of the mirror one more time, gazing at the reflection of what lay ahead before leaving for Atlanta. This question tormented him, but he soon brushed his worries aside out of instinct, that of someone not terrified of obstacles. He reminded himself that from rocket building to transforming the automotive sector, he had surmounted many challenges throughout his life. "Welcome, sir. How could I help you?" His voice was friendly but lacked the customary zeal. Jan stopped before the basket and laid his little backpack on the floor. Rather than answering straight away, he looked about the room. He turned as if assessing the situation before speaking in a deep, husky voice that matched the tone of his mask. "I want a copy," he said. His eyes stayed steady, yet under the surface level he was still seeing. She glanced at Jan, her eyes darting over his grandfather's antique clothes and battered sneakers. She stopped momentarily, as though thinking about how to answer. "Our restaurant needs a reservation," she remarked, her voice detached but pleasant. She looked across the room where other guests, some annoyed, some curious, were staring at Jan. She hesitated and then asked, "Do you have a reservation, Jan?" She obviously wanted no difficulty, but the eager looks of the other visitors tormented her and pushed her to examine and handle things. She shook her head to calm herself. "No, but—" She knew it was unusual for the restaurant to have an empty table at busy times, but she feigned checking the reservation list, her fingers rapidly tapping across the screen. In her own response to the visitors' laughter and interactions, Jan watched every movement, but she halted, totally focused on him when their eyes locked. Startled by the interaction, he experienced an odd feeling at that same instant. His heartbeat paused. Though basic, Jan's question served a hidden goal. He was testing something, questioning the equity of this place. Having recently begun employment at Golden Maple following culinary school, he knew the unwritten norms of this restaurant, where appearance and status controlled treatment. The room appeared to turn its whole attention toward her as she stared at him. At 8:21, everyone, including staff members as well as guests, shifted their attention. Managing the night shift, Mr. Tony saw the scenario developing. Jan's assigned table was basic and lacking fresh flowers or flickering candles found on other tables. But Jan appeared more worried with the layout. He moved back as Viv took over, grinning broadly and ushering Jan toward a little table close to the kitchen door. A modest location that usually went overlooked. This, he reasoned, must be the most often used seat. Viv set the menu in front of him at 8:54, and the sound of the old shoes squeaking on the wooden floor filled the tense scene. Aware of what Jan was going to order, Viv smiled and added softly, "Take your time. I'll be right back to take your order." Ivan unfolded the menu. Knowing just what he wanted to ask for, he opened it with resolve. He sensed the whispers in the room get louder as he sat there. He knew he had not come here for dinner. He had no need to search around to find practically everyone in the restaurant staring at him. The whispers were quiet, but loud enough for him to pick their words out. Assuming Jan was there for money, the woman seated close by whispered contemptuously to her friend. The other answered, his eyes straying to Jan. Still, he said nothing, turning the pages of the menu without responding. Every glance, every whispered word, and every scornful comment appeared to tell a story about how society treats people who deviate from the path of success and riches. Though deep down, Jan absorbed everything. He seemed unconcerned by the rumors. This was exactly what he aimed to investigate: how people expose their actual selves when they come across someone different from themselves. Often, within Golden Maple's grandeur, the environment accentuated the layers of preconceptions people bring with them. Those judgments seemed to bloom even in these polished environments. Viv stayed calm and professional, even with the negative looks and whispers behind her back. She said politely, "What would you like to drink?" She then returned to taking his order as usual. She poised a pen, ready to note his request. Jan turned from the menu, a cool smirk flashing on his lips. "Just a bowl of soup and some bread, please," he said, startling her with his basic selection. He stopped for a moment, his face showing a trace of entertainment in the circumstances. Most Golden Maple customers go for sophisticated cuisine like truffle spaghetti or lobster bisque. Almost unheard of are requests for only soup and bread. Still, Viv never questioned this when a visitor asked a straightforward question. She only grinned and reassured them, "I'll bring it right away." The other employees cast perplexed, critical looks. A young female assistant murmured something to seasoned waiter Tom. Clearly bored with Viv's strategy, Tom grinned and shook his head. Jan sat coolly at his table, his hands folded, and he seemed to be unaffected. Inside, though, he was painstakingly seeing everything, every phrase, glance, and facial expression. He understood he wouldn't be able to eradicate stereotypes in one instant. He heard Tom saying a calculated judgment loud enough for Jan to hear as he passed by his table with a tray of beverages. Speaking as though he was discounting Jan's lack of response, Tom uttered the words, "waste of space." Jan looked up, startled by the direct yet perceptive inquiry. He said quietly, "No, thank you," then yawned slightly. Still, the best aspect of this encounter happened when Elon Musk finished his dinner. He ate the final piece of his sub, then gently went back to his bowl, napkin-wise, cleaned his mouth, and stopped. Reflective thoughts flooded his head. Something he felt very significant was that he had witnessed the truth about human prejudice and the power of compassion. Yoni stayed motionless, hands on the table, eyes fixated as though lost in contemplation. He could almost see his experiment approaching a conclusion. The wood under him felt firm, but in the quiet of the room his ideas echoed. Once vibrantly noisy, the Maple restaurant was now completely silent. Whispers had stopped, and a thick quiet took over instead. He knew there had been no missing detail. Rising from his chair, he attracted attention. The employees froze. Moments earlier, the room, which had the sounds of clinking cutlery and subdued conversation, was utterly quiet. Though not loud, Jan's voice pierced through the repressive silence with authority. "I want to share something before I leave," he remarked. Startled, inquisitive eyes turned to him. Some customers seemed irritated, others stared silently. As Jan persisted, his voice got louder, and he broke through the tension in the room. He untied his hair at 1742 to show its natural hue, and then gently took off his fake beard. Every movement was intentional, as though it had enormous meaning. The room went silent. Some gasped, and others held their breath in incredulity. Before their eyes, the man they had perceived as impoverished had transformed into someone else. At 1802, the evening's realities became evident. One was Elon Musk, the globally known billionaire innovator and entrepreneur. Jan looked about the room, his gaze glancing over the faces of people who had formerly criticized him. "I discounted him then," he said. His voice pierced the silence. Now it was distinct and steady. "Perhaps some of you thought I didn't belong here, but I'm not here to criticize the cuisine," he continued. The room remained silent as we questioned our perceptions and treatment of others, particularly those we perceive as different or inferior. Nobody ventured a word. Jan's comments hung in the air, mirror-like in reflection. Wei Wei covered her mouth, caught between pride, doubt, and thanks. The room hummed with shock as eyes grew in wonder. From her hand, the $50,000 tumbled to the floor. She said, "Thank you," her voice strangled with feeling. "I greatly appreciate it." At 21:16, Jan grinned softly. His eyes gleamed with truth. He said simply, "I qualify for this," then focused on the whole room. "Let this be a lesson," he said, still. "Though appearances can be deceptive, how you treat others reveals their actual value." His eyes were now focused and determined. To those who had before assessed him, his voice permeated the space. "Let's have a lesson." First, people mostly focused on Elon Musk, but soon it turned to Vivian, the maid who decided to treat him respectfully when no one else would have. Quickly spreading news of this tragedy sparked discussions and writings on fiction's moral issues, including racism and kindness. Reflecting on Elon Musk's experiment at Golden Maple, people swarmed to the city in order to start meaningful conversations about how we treat others. As the narrative gained more traction on major news sources, headlines honoring Vivian with titles like "The Maid Who Treated Elon Nicely" and Musk and Viv's lesson in empathy began to highlight her. Seeking to interview Vivian, reporters swarmed Golden Maple. She first felt overwhelmed by the unplanned focus. She never would have believed that an apparently ordinary and basic behavior could have such a significant effect. When she chose to speak out, though, her words were honest and humble. "I believe everyone deserves kindness and dignity. I don't know him," she said. She minimized the importance of her acts, saying it wasn't really significant. "That's what everyone should do, not just billionaires in disguise," she remarked. Vivian's narrative traveled fast outside of the city and won hearts everywhere. She came to represent the strength of little deeds of compassion, motivating many to change their behavior toward others. For Vivian, the chance to follow her dreams mattered more than any accolades she had ever known. She had once worried she would never be able to realize her ambition of starting culinary school. Elon Musk's $50,000 gift made that ambition a reality. Vivian not only promoted diversity and compassion in the service sector, but also revealed her dedication to her academics. Her ultimate dream was to open her own restaurant, welcoming everyone from all backgrounds. Apart from her professional development, Vivian started to urge empathy and understanding among colleagues. Tony, Golden Maple's manager, changed drastically in the meantime. The activities of Elon Musk's experimental evening let him see room for development. Elon Musk recognized the potential to enhance the restaurant through innovative training programs that prioritize empathy. The training urged employees to face their own prejudices and realize the importance of treating everyone with dignity. These modifications quickly began to yield positive results. Once distinguished, Golden Maple evolved into a place where friendliness and welcome took the stage. Customers from all walks of life, from the affluent to the ordinary person, now felt welcome. Customer comments started to focus on staff professionalism and honesty as well as food quality. The changing story of the restaurant attracted a lot of media attention. Various pieces highlighted its commitment to promoting inclusivity and empathy in the service sector. I want to comment on the film's ending social experiment. By means of Elon Musk and Viv's narrative, I came to see that in life, respect and compassion are priceless qualities we sometimes ignore. Although appearances define society, our behavior toward others really reveals our inner selves. As Viv's tale shows, sometimes a little act of compassion or empathy may transform a life. I would want to stress the lesson: never criticize others based just on appearances. Each person deserves respect and fair treatment since everyone has unique goals, dreams, and narratives. Let us live with compassion and always be ready to assist, as little deeds can have a big impact. Every one of us should set aside a daily moment to treat the people in our vicinity kindly. Prejudices or appearances should not distort our ability to understand and relate. Be the change, propagate noble ideals, build a society in which everyone feels loved and valued,